So thanks much for being here today, and thanks much, in fact, also for the entire year. Let me take this opportunity to already wish you happy holidays and a very good 2023. And thank you very much for all your support and help during this year. It's really indispensable to work with experts like you to drive this agenda and to really be able to bring this to some fruitful outcomes. Now, as you know, urban forestry for us is really the integrated nature-based solution with an EC region that has 42% of global forests, is also highly urbanized with 75% in Europe and 80% in North America. The cities are facing the same challenges everywhere. I think there's not a single city in our region that is not part of this loss and fragmentation of urban natural areas, or the physical and mental health crisis, or climate change impacts, air pollution. So the issues are the same. Pushing for sustainable urban and peri-urban forestry as an integrated nature-based solution is therefore one of the core components of our efforts. And also, and I might say I'm currently in Montreal, of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So this is definitely something that has been recognized. And actually right now, Montreal hosts the first city a city and region-based summit, which started yesterday. I will be joining them today, and I look very much forward to also getting this agenda into the Global Biodiversity Framework. Next slide, please. Now, what is urban and peri-urban forestry? We know all that there's the simple definition is really just the woody and associated vegetation in and around urban areas. I think it is important to understand that we are not only talking about trees. It is much more than that, and much more than that is needed also for that biodiversity. I think this definition of really woody and associated vegetation in and around urban areas is really very appropriate in this context. So we are in the realm of sustainable urban and peri-urban forestry. Now, what does that mean? As many of you might know, that sustainable forestry per se has been around for a very long time, but what does it mean in the city context? And here really it's the art, the science, the practice, the planning, the design, and also the management of urban and peri-urban forests and trees to meet not only the current needs, but also the needs of future generations. And that is very important because obviously we all know that trees often don't grow in one generation. So we really need to plan ahead. Next slide, please. It is important. Why? A lot of you might have seen this this circle that we developed, a graph that explains it all to you, but it is simply important because it helps localize many of the global agendas. And I think by having the first city summit at this Montreal meeting here of the Biodiversity Convention, this is really underlined. The localization is one of the conditions of success, I would say. So it's not only important for the CBD convention, but it's important for the SDGs. It's important for the climate convention, for the Sendai framework, and all other national and global goals. It can no longer be denied that cities and districts and regions play a very, very important role in the global agenda. Next slide, please. UNECE has been actually working on forestry for 75 years, and we have been learning a lot from the past, as I said, particularly in sustainable forest management. And by really trying to build societies and rebuild societies to promote nature and climate positive developments, we are also committed to bring this to the urban and peri-urban level and make that really a critical nature-based infrastructure and nature-based solution. Next slide, please. Now, where do we stand today? Just this morning, Daniel informed me that we have now 69 cities worldwide that have pledged millions of trees to be planted. But as we all know, this is not enough. It seems to be a very cost-effective nature-based solution, but obviously only if certain conditions are met. All this is good for the economy, it's good for biodiversity, it's good for health and well-being, it's good for mitigating and adaptation of climate change and disaster risk reduction. But certain conditions need to be met. Next slide, please. Long-term planning, long-term management and maintenance, ongoing monitoring, adequate investment, and coming here, making the link to benchmarking, we need to know what is actually there. And I think much more than in the rural space, in the urban space, we deal with many different owners. It's not always just the government. It can be, I mean, we were in Budapest last week. We had a workshop on urban forestry where the city of Budapest is managing some of the trees, but the rest of the trees are managed by various districts. And the city of Budapest has, in fact, nothing to say about that. So it's quite a complicated and intricate relationship that's happening there. So long-term planning together with all those involved in tree planting and tree caring is super important. The monitoring is super important. We always say the right tree for the right reasons in the right place. And I might add, and that became very clear last week as well, under the right conditions. The right conditions have to be created. It's not just enough to choose the right tree. We have to create the right conditions for this tree to survive. We need the money to make it survive. We need the caring to make it survive. So all these conditions that you see here, I think, summarize this quite well. Next slide, please. We've also worked on the 330-300 rule that Cecil, whom you probably all know, has developed. It's been taken up by even The Guardian, so even major news outlets are getting to it. This is a very simple rule, might not work in all cases, but it's a very simple rule to apply when planning where trees are in fact necessary and where they should be. Next slide, please. So we would like to invite you, and as I said, many of you have supported us already during this entire year, to define your pledge on the Trees in Cities Challenge. I will call for the same also here in Montreal. It's a very simple way to do it, but it's also an official registry that makes things a bit more formal and a bit more higher level. You become part of an international registry. Obviously, we give you a certificate and we let you use that on social media and all other promotional channels. In addition to that, we developed a policy brief on sustainable urban and peri-urban forestry, which is now available also in Russian, French, in addition to English. We have a Trees in Cities information brochure available in many languages. And we also have a draft regional urban forestry opportunities plan because we think the next level definitely needs to be addressed. Next slide, please. Here you have the QR codes once again, and I invite you all to join us in this fight for the right tree in the right place for the right reasons and under the right conditions.